really difficult thing to get started after lunch. But I thank you for being here this afternoon. And as I was thinking about this, I've not grown up in this church. First came in the 70s, and so one of the common threads, I think, and what was mentioned before, is that missions has always been a really big part of Allensville. And looking back over the last 30, 40 years, that has been the case. And as Phil mentioned this morning, I remember that first concept of direct missions giving and supporting missionaries, persons in ministry directly. And that came through Phil's vision for the church here. And it's interesting, Phil and Retta here from Spain, to give us a little bit of background on what they're doing now. Dwayne certainly has been a long-standing person that we've supported. And then also George Moeller will be speaking too. So we'll just let them come in that order, Phil, Dwayne, and then George. And blessings as you share. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm basically just going to be going through PowerPoint here, so kill our lights and click through it. You see it okay? Sherman had suggested I kind of do it. Yeah, that might be better. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. It is on. It is on. Yeah. Okay. Great. I had mentioned it might be good to kind of like give it a little bit of a historical review as how we got involved in Spain and some of the highlights past couple of the years, what's going on now. So basically that's what I want to do here. So let's go on, so I can get the, what do I do? Press this involvements. Oh, okay. You can move it on, can you? Right. So, with our switch to CMC, we're involved with Rosedale Mennonite Mission, and they've always had an emphasis on reaching the least reached people. So they've gone to some of the more difficult parts of the world. Think of Richard Showalter was in Turkey, trying to reach Muslims there. So I think it's a good emphasis, the people that haven't heard the gospel, the least reached, least evangelized. Next one, please, yeah. RBC also was interested. After I was here, I was teaching at RBC, and we had a new president, and he wanted to emphasize experiential learning, students going somewhere and learning in context. And a lot of colleges do that, and so they want to try and develop that at RBC. And I was involved on a committee that was trying to get that set up. So RBC was interested in developing experiential learning possibilities for students. Next one. So in 2005, there was a joint RMM-RBC committee set up to explore the possibilities of working together on this. Paul Kurtz was on it. Trying to think, Ken Miller and Wilbur was on it, as well as myself. There's like 4 of us, 2 from RMM, 2 from RBC. And RMM's at that time was getting an interest in Spain because of its the fact that, it's a very small percentage of evangelicals there, less than 1%. And also its proximity to the 1040 window to Morocco, and the need for evangelization of Muslims there. And so we tried to gear RBC's interest in a cross-cultural winter term with RMM's interest in Spain. So it kind of came together. Next one. So in the RBC winter term of 2006, Maretta and I traveled to Spain to explore the possibilities. So we flew into Madrid and then drove east to Valencia and then kind of went down the coast there. There's one possibility just south of Valencia that we checked out, and then we kept going. And we're basically looking for a place where we could host an RBC 6-week cross-cultural term. So it was kind of like a step out into the unknown. Next one. Yeah, we looked at a number of options, but eventually settled on Rincon de la Victoria as a place. Some of you stayed in Los Rubios, right, when you were there. And we've been told about that place, and it was a fairly cheap place to stay, cheaper than the hotels. So we ended up spending a bit more time there. And it seemed like a possible place to have 10 students, in the rooms, and then could have classes with them. And whilst we were there, I got in touch with YWAM because they had trips to Morocco where they would take young people on evangelistic trips to Morocco. And so I was thinking we could maybe get involved in that as well. And those people in YWAM said, oh, there's a church in Rincon de la Victoria which you could maybe contact, and maybe they would be able to be willing to host it. So I did that. I called Juan Carlos Rivas. I think maybe the next one there. Oh, I've got it. Okay. So yeah, pastor offered to host the RBC study term quite generously. He said, "Oh yeah, you can do it here." They had classrooms, and we thought we could host the students with families from the church. And but his church was in kind of a bit of a pickle at that point of time. And so he said he felt like Nehemiah, going back to the ruins of Jerusalem, the walls all turned down. And so I said, oh, well, we'll try and see if we can find somebody to give you a helping hand. Next slide. I can do that, right? Can I? No? Next slide, man, please. Yeah, so just a quick. So we're looking at this region, Europe. It's sad, I'm from Europe, right? Kind of sad to talk about this. England may be one of the most evangelical areas. Finland is, I suppose, but there's more people in England. So the biggest evangelical community in Europe is in England, but it's only about 8% of the population. You're looking at like 24% here in the US, and then half the people go to church regularly, whereas it would be a lot less than that in England, certainly in Spain as well. So the lighter colored areas are the less Christian, France is very secular, Spain, Italy, Greece, all these areas, Eastern Europe parts as well. I think, is this Belarus up here? Can't get this light. Up there, right? Belarus, right? We're going as well. So Europe is in certainly need of re-evangelization, unfortunately, right? The gospel took hold there. Let's say it took 1,000 years to evangelize Europe, and it needs to be re-evangelized again. So we're in the south there. Next slide, please. This near Malaga, between Malaga and Nerja, there on the map. Next one. Specifically Rincon de la Victoria is the area in which we're working. Okay, next slide, please. So here's Juan Carlos Rivas, this guy, pastor, was talking about. You can see the kind of situation that we're in there. There weren't too many people in the congregation. They were meeting in this kind of unfinished area. And so what we did, we decided we'll try and get him some help, work team over there to try and do something with that. And I don't know, Sheldon, if you remember, but I kind of we had a family reunion back here, and I was mentioning this need, and Sheldon said, well, maybe we could help. And so that gave rise to a couple of work teams going over there, and kind of transformed that. Next slide, please. So, yeah, here's just another picture of the kind of situation we were in. I don't know if you can see on this slide here, there was no ceiling in it. So I think on the second trip, or it was on the first trip, that we put the ceiling in. And basically, what we learned through all that is if you come alongside a congregation and help them, it can make a big difference. Right? And this church became a lot stronger through the help that we gave. Next slide. So AMC offered to help, sent 2 work teams and financial help, coincided with the RBC study terms in Rincon 2007 and 2010. So I was there with about 10 students each time. The work team was there, so that was kind of nice. And we did a few things together. After the 2013 RBC study term, we transitioned to working full-time in Spain with, in this Operation Birthright, so I was under the church here as our sending church in coordination with RMM. RMM was trying this Operation Birthright approach where the local church is sending and they're facilitating it. So it seemed like a good model. We continued and continue to host RBC study terms and RMM Reach teams while building up the local church there. We thought we were going to continue to work with Parque Victoria, but there's a new pastor there, and we couldn't really work together, his approach to things. That congregation is continuing, but we ended up with another church plant that needed help. And so we've been working alongside them for about 4 years now. It's basically a family, extended family, trying to plant a church with some support back here in the U.S. from relatives that have moved here, who live in the U.S. that also are related to people over there. So it's a big extended family. And we've been kind of working alongside them. La Victoria. So in Rincon de la Victoria, about 40,000 people, there's 3 evangelical churches. And so that's not a lot, right? I mean, you should try and aim to have 1 evangelical church for every 1,000 people. That was 10,000 people here in Big Valley. How many? Quite a few evangelical churches, Bible-believing churches where the gospel is understood. So it's huge need there. So it's good that there's another church there and that we can help and encourage it. Next one. So I don't know if you remember this youth group came a couple of years ago now, and they helped up at the camp, Springs of Life camp, that is connected with this church through many relationships. In fact, this week there's a children's camp up there for about 80 children. They've got about a third of those will be from non-church going, non-Christian background, and pastor and his wife, and a couple of other couples. Pablo and Rosa are going to be helping up there. Pablo seems to do really well with relating to children, and so it should be a good week, and hopefully these children make commitments, and it seems to follow through. Pablo and Rosa have had a few kids making commitments in their community, and they've stuck with it. So the youth team was up there, and then they were also helping here at the church. They painted this bit in the front here, a yellow line. It's still like that, and that was greatly appreciated. Next one. So this is the RBC study term that we did earlier in January and February. Students waiting in the morning to begin class. They walk to class there. Next one. It's a classroom. So we met basically in the mornings, about 4 days a week, and the other day of the week we were out visiting the various places. So we do 2 courses language and culture of Spain and the history of Spain, trying to understand the context in which we are there, in which the church is, and which you're doing, reaching out to people, and also engaging contemporary culture, trying to understand modern culture, what's happened, in terms of attitude to the truth and things like that. So we're better equipped to engage it. So that's the idea. So those are the students. We took them out to Frigiliana, which is a traditional small village where all the houses are built together. This donkey, it is a donkey, right? Got this right? It's not a mule, or is it a mule? Is it? Okay. This mule here, right? They used to carry the building material around because you can't get a car up there. We took them to Granada. One of the things, part of the reason we did it in this area was called the sites that you can go and see. Here's Granada with the Alhambra castle behind, which is one of these UNESCO World Heritage sites that thousands and thousands and thousands of people see. In the winter it's quieter, so we're able to do that. Then we went for a meal afterwards, so here they are in this kind of cafe. It's like a bar and a cafe, right? But it's not just kind of for drinking alcohol, right? I mean, you get food there, right? So here they are. Marissa was with the girls, and the guys, we kind of separated. I don't know why, but they were in one table and we were the other. The next picture. So Marissa took these pictures. She liked these, hams with the fat dripping out. Fat drips off and goes into those things at the bottom. So they leave them there so all the fat to drip out and then eventually eat it. Right? This is jamón serrano that Spain's famous for. And they're expensive, 62 euros, something like that. Another place we took the students, Athenipo, which you can see this is a Roman theater. And the whole city was built on a slope going up to a ridge at the top, which overlooked the surrounding valleys. Next one. Here's another view of the theater. You can see they cut the seats into the actual hillside. And the students thinking about committing suicide, jumping off the edge there. Too much tension for them. When we afterwards went to a place called Ronda, which is nearby, one of the students decided to buy one of these masks from a shop, right? So this is a picture of him with his helmet, right? Derek. When we went to Cordoba, this is it was a church, and then the Muslims invaded Spain and made the churches into mosques, and then there was a reconquest, and when it came back into the Spanish hands, it became a church again. So this is a church that has been a mosque that was a church as well. And you can see the designs there. Yeah, sorry. Mealtime, they took sandwiches, and so we're teaching them how to eat out on the street there. Next one, and the guys there as well. Center of the town of Cordoba. Medina Azara, you can see this is it was the headquarters of the Muslim rulers, and they built a city for themselves outside Cordoba, and a lot of it's visible, still there, and you can go and visit it. So it's interesting. This is Italica, which is near Seville, and this is an amphitheater. It feels like you're in Rome. So this would be from the time of Christ, if not earlier. And these are the alleyways underneath where the people would move around, or the animals, and then come out on the stage in the center there. We also went to the Monasterio de San Isidoro del Campo, which was a center for the Reformation in Spain. It was stamped out. A lot of believers died for their faith in Spain, and have died for their faith over the years because of the strength of the Catholic Church there. But in this monastery, they were impacted by the Reformation in the north, and became a center of outreach, and basically the whole monastery, the monks there became believers, evangelical believers, but were chased out. So it was interesting, for them, as Mennonites, we're aware of the persecutions in Europe, the ancestors. The Spanish believers, it's very real to them, right? The persecutions that their forefathers have gone through, and fellow believers. That little guy there was the one that was showing us around and explaining us all that had gone on there. This is where the Amish get their hats in Seville. We looked around Seville a bit. And these are the buggies they drive around there. So we took a little trip in their buggies. Next one. This is the Plaza de España, which they kind of bring you to. This is where they did part of the Star Wars movies was filmed here because it's kind of so exotic looking. It's got real spires and everything like that. So students find that interesting. Then we went to Gibraltar. Here's Antonio. I've mentioned Antonio a number of times with Superman behind him. But Antonio's the guy that's been working on the farm school project, and he is communicating with one of the monkeys there on top of the rock. This is the highest point of the rock in Gibraltar, so we kind of walked over it with the students. Reach Team, 2018. So they were there for about 3 months, and then they had 3 months in Cyprus because of visa restrictions. This is at the pastor's house. That's Eunice on the right there with her kids, and Ivan's taking the picture. So they hosted them for a meal, just to kind of be nice. Don't know, was this when they were going or when they arrived? Remember when they were going? Yeah. Okay, next one. Yeah. So Reach Team was helping up at the camp, clearing some spaces there. So this is what we did one day. Walking there. I got to burn everything. So I like burning things. So that was the thing. That's my niche in life, and to burn wood. So I do that when I go. And it's a bit dark, but there's Antonio in the middle with the 4 members of the Reach Team there. He worked with them. One thing that the Farm School Project does is they try and do outreaches connected to the camp. And one of the things they've been doing is trying to improve the stream. Because there's a guy with a bunch of pigs upstream, right? And he just put all his effluent in the stream and kind of killed the stream off, right? But he's been told to do differently, and so he's not doing that anymore. And so they're monitoring how the stream gets improved and things like that. And it's an official thing sponsored by the government, and so people come in. And the idea is that you get people in there and you can talk to them. It's kind of a relational way of building a bridge to communicate the gospel. So here they're looking for kind of wildlife or life in the stream, overturning rocks, looking for bugs and things like that. And then they write that all down, and it's done on a regular basis. Like you see Pablo in the center. I don't know what he's found there, but he's feeling good about that, right? As you can see, he and Rosa were there as well, and these are other people from the church that were helping out, as well as some other people that came. Then they're analyzing it. This was news to me, so I was kind of watching. And they've got these charts on the right there, and they're trying to identify the bugs from the charts and then write down what kind of bugs they found in the stream. And then that gives you an idea of how alive the stream is. So that's Tomas, that's Antonio's son with something he found. Afterwards, went for a walk. This is another stream nearby that stream goes into. So that was the group. And this is the results of a work team that went up to the camp. Randy, Laverne, Trenton, Josh, and Alan, right? And they put in a bed for where the water came in. It goes through this now, and so when it goes out into the stream, it's pure. And it's not polluting the stream in any way. So that's doing really well. Randy thought this, it was kind of pine, this wood that they put up. He thought that would rot, but it's still there, very strong. So it's the climate so dry. Next one. May the 24th this year, they had the evangelical students from the different schools in Malaga. So these students are going to public schools, and there's not many of them. So maybe in a school of 700, there'd be maybe 5 students or evangelicals spread across all the years, right? And Spain has made it so that if there's enough students, you can bring in a teacher, an evangelical teacher, and he can teach the Bible to these students. And so they're dotted about all the province of Malaga, and every year they bring them together so they get to know each other, because they don't, they're not aware of there being other Christians, believers in their schools in the province. So this was this event. Next one, kind of registering here, getting their shirts, and then they were kind of organizing them in the. This is in the camp meeting room. They taught them a song. Here, both those people at the front are from La Victoria Church. That's Antonio's wife on the left at the front, and this would be Rosa's niece, right, on the right here. So they teach. You got to do things that are kind of like get the youth involved, right? Kind of high octane stuff. So they were doing a bit of a motions with this. And then Ivan, that's, with the orange shirt there in the center, the pastor of La Victoria Church, he was challenging the students with, giving them a message. Can't really exactly remember what it was about, no? Can you, Marissa? It was a good message, though, anyway. It's like a good meal, right? I mean, you eat the meal, and then you feel satisfied, but maybe a week later you don't remember what the meal was like, but it was good. We had church life here, baptism. I mean, you've seen these pictures before, I think. The lady second from the right, Montse, became a believer this last year, and her husband then quickly following that became a believer, and they've been attending church regularly and learning. So they were baptized in the Mediterranean, and this was the event. So they kind of waved out, so it's deep enough, and then they baptize them. So they do this, this is like Sunday morning. People normally go to the beach, are all around, so they just have a service there. So it's an opportunity to witness publicly for your faith as well. It's me teaching Bible doctrine. They asked me to do this, so I've been doing this for the last year now, teaching them, and it's been good. Between 16 and 10 students, depending on adults from the church. They're what should I say? They're believers that are committed, but they've got a lot of questions, and so this gives them an opportunity to ask questions, think through the faith. You're in an environment that attacks your faith all the time. So they need that kind of encouragement. Next one. It's another one on me. And wider view. Pablo's been coming to this class as well. Maretta's been teaching them about pumpkin pie. So on Thanksgiving, she made this pie for them. This is the kind of family, the extended family that have been trying to work at getting this church going. back up one. Yeah, Ivan there in the back. There was the pastor, and Alethea, Antonio's wife here, Antonio on the right. This is another sister in between. She's up in Granada. And then Eunice, Ivan's wife. And then over on the left there would be Alethea, who would be like the mother of her daughter, those two girls next to her, right? There are two daughters. So, you know, the family is very important in Spain, right? It's very important. It's the kind of strength of the church. So they enjoyed that. This is amusing because Antonio did a kind of like a course through the municipality on business, you know, to get a good business model for the farm school. And there was kind of a presentation of all these businesses in a meeting at the end of the course. And then they had these two comics to kind of entertain people at the end. And of course, what the comics like to do is to get somebody from the audience and embarrass them, right? So they picked on Moretta here. So she's got the Leal, the farm school, what do you call it, T-shirt on there. She did very well. She handled it very well, I thought. And the mayor of Rincon was there, so it was a good time for a kind of opportunity for a witness. Next one. This is the choir. They're still going strong. We had another event again at right in the center of the town. You know, this is amazing for believers in Spain, right? Once, not too many years ago, they couldn't even meet together officially. Like the older lady Alethea and her husband Pepe, he's the assistant pastor of the church. They were in Bible studies in Sevilla where the police would break them up during the Franco era. So it's been quite a transformation that they have this opportunity. Your problem now is just apathy and secularism, right? But you're not got the kind of hard persecution that they had during Franco's era. This is a Christmas program where the youth were involved. There's a choir that was involved as well. The youth did a kind of like a skit and a presentation. So the young people of the church here. You see it's a Christmas theme. Good Friday, we did a Messianic banquet. I don't know if you remember, we did that here a couple of times. Like I said, you know, in a newsletter I sent out, it's very dark Good Friday in Catholic countries because of the emphasis on Christ's suffering, not much acknowledgement of resurrection. So we wanted to do this to kind of put it in the setting of the Exodus from Egypt, the celebration of God's deliverance from bondage, right? And which is what the communion came out of, right? What we do, what we call communion, came out of the Last Supper, which was a Passover meal, in which Jesus gave significance to the bread and the wine as a memorial of a sacrifice that had been given. So it was about 100 people there. This is the building that they're hoping to buy. The church is in a bit of a bind at the moment. They've been renting this building, and the owner wants to sell it, and so they're going to have to either buy it or move out, and they've had difficulty moving out. So we're trying to help them get a loan for this building, right? Possibility that we could get a loan through Eastern Mennonite Missions, but we need somebody to back that up. So, kind of stand collateral, a church to be able to do that. It's difficult, I realize now, for Allensville to be doing that with your building program. But if you know of a church that might be willing to kind of stand behind a possible loan to this congregation, we appreciate it. They've basically been renting this building for 6 months and paid half the price of the building off already. So it's kind of a shame, but they just couldn't get the capital to get the building in the first place. It might cost about 175,000 euros or something like that to buy it. Um, it was originally a kind of like a factory, but that's the kind of place that evangelical churches have to get to meet in, right? So it's about as good as they're going to get. So it's an item to prayer, and if you know of any help out there, appreciate knowing about it. This is the Passover service still. Part of that was for kids asking questions. Why are we doing this? It's fulfillment of Exodus, where God says, tell this to your children. So that was them doing it. Ivan was kind of explaining things. I was kind of there was two parts, like the father goes through the Passover Seder. So I was kind of given that bit to do. And then they had the choir singing at the end. This is our house. I feel like the Hobbit emerging from the house is kind of like built on a hill, so it kind of goes down there. We're surrounded by, these are avocado trees. So this is a nicer place that we can rent. We don't have to get out of it every now and again like we did the other place we were in. So that's made life a lot easier. Maretta loves it there, right? Out in the countryside. Birds and just farmland around. So it's like kind of living around here in many regards. This is our front, the gate that we need to get out, right? So the farm's surrounded. And we met this chameleon there one day. So, know what you expect when you're kind of leaving. This is the seafront at Rincon. A lot of there's a commercial fishing port just up the coast. So we see these boats going back and forth with their fish, followed by all the seagulls there. This kind of thing you meet along the road. You got like goats, right? So you kind of stuck there for a while till they pass. Inland, there's the biggest breeding colony for flamingos in Europe, just up not far from the camp. So these are the flamingos. It's a bit of a surprise for us that there would be flamingos there. We're thinking like Florida, but there's some of them. This is that was our latest granddaughter, right? Amelia. So this is another part of our work. We're back because Mary's going to be having another baby after this one. It was nearly 2 years ago now. So, and next one. So we do a little bit of work whilst we're here. And we're helping with our garden there. And this is in England. My brother's allotment in England. I don't know if you're interested, but got us working there as well. You work for your keep. All right, well, I'm not sure how much time I use there. What are we doing? Any questions? Like I said, the farm school project is going well. We've got a contract now with the camp for 3 years, hoping to get schools to finally start coming in. So that's been a real answer to prayer. Like I said, the building for the church is a bit of a burden at the moment, so if you could pray about that, we appreciate it. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. It is my joy and privilege to be here. I was recounting. My name is Dwayne Zook, and I was doing a little bit of genealogy research with my mother a couple days ago and discovered, I knew that my grandfather Yuri Zook was deacon here beginning in the 1920s. His father Levi J. Came here, and his father, Major David, I couldn't quite figure out whether he was Amish and then became Amish Mennonite part of Allensville, or whether Levi was the first that came here. Couldn't quite figure that out. But anyway, my roots go way back. And my father, Floyd, and my mother, Betty, were the ones that introduced me to Allensville Mennonite Church. I remember sitting in the front bench here with my father when he was Sunday school superintendent. And one morning I was looking underneath there and I found that little button and pushed the Sunday school button. So I think my father was very embarrassed, and I never did that again, by the way. I was born in December of 1952, 15, that was a Monday. I don't know exactly when my parents brought me here. I don't know if it was the 21st of December or the 28th of December or the first Sunday in January. But that was my introduction to Allensville Mennonite. And here is where I heard about the love of God. And it's part of a revival service where the Lord really touched my heart. But then in the fall of '65, Nelson Roth back here was doing, we were having revival meetings here at Allensville, and Nelson was preaching, and he gave an invitation, and afterward I talked to Brother Roth in the back and said, I want to make that decision. And the next evening, my Uncle Raymond and Aunt Ethel came up to our house here in Allensville, and that's where I know for sure, beyond a shadow of the doubt, that I did trust Christ. And so not only did my genealogy roots begin here, but my Christian roots and Christian walk started here. And God did some things back then to begin to prepare me for serving the Lord. And for the last 43 years, my wife and I, my wife Jeannie down here, and she's going to raise her hand when my time is up so that I don't go over, because I tend to do that. But we've been serving with Campus Crusade for Christ, now known as Cru here in North America. And for the last number of years, I've served with the Josh McDowell Ministry, which is a ministry of Cru, for 29 years. I want to share just a little bit about some of the things that God has been doing. We as a ministry exist to serve others like yourselves, churches and ministries and Christians around the world, so that everyone can hear about Christ. And our vision is that there will be true believers here and everywhere around the world who can live, defend, and share their faith. And we do that through whether it's live speaking events, Josh speaking, whether it's through resources like More Than a Carpenter, which has been translated into 127 languages, I believe, through Evidence That Demands a Verdict. We have messages in one of three major categories: classical apologetics, why is the Bible reliable? Is it trustworthy? What about Christ? Was he really the Son of God, or was he a prophet? What about the resurrection? Relational apologetics. If God is God and the Bible is true, then how does that affect my relationships? So teaching biblical truth in the context of relationships. And then the third area is moral apologetics, teaching on issues of purity and how that affects our life also. Something new with us up until 2 years ago, Josh was the only speaker and author with us. We now have 3 new speakers, and we might say 4, because one of our Korean staff who lives here in America has really been developing a speaking ministry, not only in the Pacific Rim and Southeast Asia, but also in some Korean churches in the Dallas area. Something else that's new is we're working on taking a lot of our resources and developing curriculum. 2 years ago, Josh's book, Evidence That Demands a Verdict, was newly released and updated. We now have a 6-session study guide with DVD, and I'm going to leave that here for the church to be able to use and share around. But those are some of the things. We focus around the world. I will tell you a couple stories, and I know I've shared some of the technology that we've been using in the past. One of the things we've developed over the last year is we've taken More Than a Carpenter and developed what we call a augmented reality version of More Than a Carpenter in Arabic. And what that means is there are pictures, there's a picture in the back, as well as different pictures in here, that if you hold your smartphone over that, that will actually take you to a video, a short 2 to 4 minute video of Josh or someone else that talks about the content in More Than a Carpenter. There's also a picture of Jesus from the Jesus film in here, and the Jesus film has been divided into about 60 different short segments, and it will take you to a segment from the Jesus film, and every couple weeks that segment will change. We have about 220 videos that we've created, and so every couple weeks that will change. It augments what is in writing into the visual. There's also some music score, and if you hold the phone over that, that'll take you to some Arabic worship music. So that's one of the things. We've printed about 5,000 of those initially in Lebanon, and they will be distributed in Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, mostly, maybe some in Iraq, but to test it, and then we hope to do more of those. Another project that we've been doing in conjunction with the Jesus film, we had received a request from the head of the Coptic church in Egypt to receive 1 million copies of this, which is the Right Choice Family Bible. It's about 60 Bible stories, has pictures, and it has the story and picture, but then it has some discussion questions that parents can take the children through, and then a prayer. And so that is something that we've been able to print about 80,000 of those so far, so we have a long ways to go. But we are getting stories how these are going into villages, Coptic villages, other villages that are very, very remote and have very little Christian influence. And so we're trying to get the message of the scriptures into these remote families where there's a lot of persecution going on. And there are some little QR codes. I know you can't see them from back there, but again, if you hold your smartphone over that, that'll take you to one of the Jesus film segments that relate to the story. So those are some things. Let me share with you a story about a young lady that I met in Turkey. This past, I think it was February, if I'm remembering correct, February or March. She came up to me and was thanking me for Josh's books. And I said, well, tell me your story. And she said, well, I grew up in Shanghai, China. And she said, when I was a student, I had an American missionary who was teaching me English. And she said, she introduced me to the Jesus film. I watched that and I was very interested in the Bible. And so I asked her for a Bible. She gave me a Bible and I began to read that. And she said, then somebody gave me a copy of Josh McDowell's book, Evidence That Demands a Verdict. Now that's a big book. It's thick. It's not something you read through in an evening or even a week. But she said, on my way to the university, she said, every morning on the subway, I had that on my smart device and I was reading that, and that helped really answer the questions that I had about Christ, the Bible, the resurrection, and Christianity. And so she said, that really helped me firm up my decision to follow Jesus. And I said, so why are you here? She said, God has called me from China now to be a missionary here in Turkey to university students. Those are the kinds of stories I love to hear. Talking about China, this last Wednesday evening, I was in Chicago for some meetings, and I met a young couple there who are from China. They've been here in the States studying at Wheaton College for the last 2 years. And they shared with me how they have set up a business. Sometimes you need to set up a business in a closed country. And they, a few years ago, came across one of Josh's books called How to Be a Hero to Your Kids. And in there are 6 A's, or 6 principles of building strong and healthy relationships. And this is the book in Chinese. And what they have done is they have developed a whole curriculum of training people on how to build healthy relationships, and all based on the scriptures. And to date, they have trained 225 trainers who have literally gone into schools and different businesses and have trained thousands upon thousands. And their vision is to spread this across the whole country of China. We've just completed our 6th, what we call Chinese library distribution to every graduating senior of the 30 official seminaries in China, and we just completed that. We give them a set of 8 of Josh's books each year when they graduate. Those are just a couple things that, and the kinds of things that we are doing. And let me add, we would not be doing were it not for the faithful prayers and the faithful financial support and partnership of Allensville Mennonite Church. So Jeannie and I so appreciate each one of you and your partnership. And you may not be able to go to these places, but you are through your partnership, and you're reaching areas that are very difficult to reach. So I've got lots more stories I could share. I'll do that some other time. Thank you.
You noticed I come up here without any papers. Nothing. It's all in the head. Well, as an introduction myself, you know, when you open up a book, it usually has an intro in or something like that. So for those of you who are here that don't know me, George Moeller, I came to the Valley in 1942 in April from an orphanage just south of Lancaster in Millersville. So 1942. I was 7 years old. And this lady, Katie May, down the road here, most of you have heard of her maybe, but she attended church here in the old church. So this is where I first went to the Allensville Mennonite Church, in the old church. And I was growing up there until it was changed to this. When this was built, the first bench here, there was a whole bunch of us come here for baptismal service. I think there might have been 18 or 19 of us in that row there. My foster sister, Martha, I think Ronald Peachy, and Lee Yoder. There's Lee still back to dear old Lee. Was, I think, in there too. But a bunch of us. And so that was the beginning of my connections with Mennonites. I never heard of Mennonites before and that sort of thing, but it was a wonderful thing. And I remember we used to have council meeting before communion the week before. And the ladies would go back there and to the side, men on that side, and I didn't know quite what to say. I asked my friend Sammy that grew up on the farm with me, Sammy Peachy. I said, "What are you supposed to do when you go back here?" Well, he said, "When you go back here, you look to them and say, if you're happy, you want to take communion, you say, 'I have peace with God and my fellow man, and I would like to take communion.' But if you were unhappy about something or mad at somebody or felt guilty about something, then you would say, 'I would like to speak to an elder before the communion service comes around.'" So that was my introduction to be honest and realistic. And well, I went to school, and as time went on, I thought I loved history, geography, and spelling. I'm going to go see every country in the world when I grow up. It just has to be. I love it. Well, in 1983, I finally started branching out. I went with Brother Lee Carnegie from here and his wife, Adela. They're deceased, I think, both of them, I'm not sure. But anyway, they took some of us from the church here over to Japan and Korea. We were in South Korea. One day we went on the bus and we went out to the very border of North Korea where Kim Jong-un is over there, president now. So I saw that. And so that was the beginning of getting to see some other countries. Fast forward. In 1992, my friend Lee said to me in, I think about November, December, he said, "Hey, George, how would you like to go to Russia with Josh McDowell Ministries and distribute Bibles and gospel literature?" And I said, "You can't go there. That's communist." Oh, he said, communism collapsed in 1981. A man by the name of Josh McDowell went over there, and he's finding out they need Bibles and gospel literature. And so now we're going to go over there and distribute gospel literature. I said, "I'd love to go." And my first wife, Katie, said, "Honey, would you care if I'd go to Russia?" Because she didn't want to go that far. And she said, "No, if you want to go, you go ahead." So in January, I think it was in 1993, God changed my heart from just a busy man, just doing things everyday life and this and that and the other thing, to open a new venture. So a couple hundred of us, several hundred of us, got on planes and we flew over to Moscow, Russia. We went to the place called Cosmos Hotel, a big hotel where hundreds of people, and there was several hundred of ours. Dwayne, correct me if I'm wrong there, but anyway, when you're in hundreds of people and you're going to a new place, some people said, I'm afraid, I'm half afraid I'm getting out of my culture, I'm afraid to get out of my comfort zone. And we had sometimes people in the hotel at night. One of you knocked on my door one night, an elderly lady says, "I am very scared to be in this place by myself. I'm out of my culture zone and I don't know what to do." And I said, "I'll come over and sit with you a little while." But I said, "It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay." So when you go in a place like that and you go to a different culture, you learn to see how they make food and their housing and their bathrooms and all. And I could share a bunch of things like that, but no, I'm not going to now because that's a different story. But anyway, that's the beginning of changing. So I did that in 1993. And I said to God, "Well, I have that under my belt. I'm going to pick a different place next year." Josh McDowell Ministries come back and said, "You need to go. You went last year, and now you know what to do. You need to go again." Well, I did. And I kept going, I think every year, a couple summer trips, until 2002. I had now made 12 trips to Russia. Now, just west of Russia is a small country called Belarus. I think it's about the size of Pennsylvania, approximately with square mileage and square miles. But anyway, in 2002, we went to Russia first, the first week of a 2-week run. Then at the end of the first week, they said, "Now we're going to go to a new country for next week, some of you." So some of us got on buses, and we went from Moscow, Russia, west, hundreds of miles, to the Belarusian Moscow-Russia border, stopped there, went through customs, had to look at our passports and visas, all that sort of thing. And so as soon as we got into Belarus, what is this? We're coming off a 2-lane country road like this out here, or even worse, and right across the border, 4-lane highways. Well, you only saw them around the border of Moscow, the ring road. Now here we're in Belarus, and nice roads and changing. This is changing. Well, you got to realize that Belarus was one time a part of the Union of Socialist Soviet Republics that we learned back when we went to school. But they wanted to get away from Russia, so they broke away from Russia, I think in the early 90s, if I'm right, got their own money, their own government, and that's what they still are. I think President Lukashenko, I think, is still president over there. He's wanted to be president anyway for a long time. And so we went over there. We went to a hotel called the Orbita Hotel, I think it was. Some of us fellows might remember. In 2002, remember now. So in that year, Sergei Vaskevich, he's kind of a bishop of churches over there in Belarus. I think presently he's down at your house down in Dallas, right? And he was the chief that we met over there at the airport and different places. And he said, "George," he said, "I understand you're a builder, you're a contractor." He said, "I have a friend out in the town of Gorodishi, has a church. Well, he has 5 house churches in villages, but he would like to have one main church built someplace. And he's in the process of trying to find a building in this town of Gorodishi that he wants to buy. They want $1,500 for it, but we don't know where that's going to come from. So I said, oh, okay. Oh boy, that's something. Come over way over here to build something? Well, I went home with a crowd, and later on in that same year, I decided to fly over there myself and meet him and see what he has in mind. Well, in that meantime, he got this agents in the town of Gorodisha to come down from $1,500 to $1,300. And he bought this big old log building, which was a dance hall. Now, before World War II, there was this building there the same way, but the Germans burned it all down. And so after that, when the war was over, the town built it back up again. And they had a dance hall for many more years, but then it was kind of phased out, I think, back in the 70s or 80s, because the floor was rotting and there was nothing going on in there. So he bought that for $1,300. And I said, you have to tear it down. We can't restructure that into a building, because some of the old logs on the bottom were so bad you could go with your hands and knees and crawl out through a hole in the logs, out on the ground outside. So I told him what we wanted to do. I come back here to this church here and told him this story. And if they would help me with some money and stuff like that, and I wanted to go over and get this and help them do that. So in 2003, I went over and I went to the sawmills and ordered stuff that I thought I needed. In 2004 or in 2005, just made a couple trips back and forth just to see what was going on. And every time I went over, I also took supplies for the orphanages and hospitals that we met in our missionary work over there that were in such dire need of things. And so I took a lot of stuff over that way. But anyway, then in 2005, I think it was, I went up here to the Allensville Planing Mill, and I talked to Roy Yoder, I think it was. He worked in the trust department. I think that was his name. And he said, I want to build a church over in Belarus. This is how many feet long it is. This is how many feet wide it is. Could you make me a copy of some trusses? This is what I would need the snow load or the weight load and how to build it. So we soon had it all off in there already in feet and inches, all ready to go. And I said, oh boy, oh no. I said, it's all metric over there. They don't know how to read feet and inches. What are we going to do? I said, can you change that to metric? Flip, flip. Push the computer, flip, everything was metric. So I went and bought some tapes that have metric on the half, foot and inches on the bottom, and we got people from the church here. There was, Lauren Hartster. Yeah, he got introduced to some of the fancy blue trucks that we had over in Belarus. Remember that, Lauren? funny. And, Adam Peachy and John A. and a couple more. And we had 2 teenage girls, I think, Sheldon's daughter, Maria, and this was in 2005. So we went over there for 10 days or 2 weeks, best part of 2 weeks. Us guys tore this old dance hall down and built the rest up there, what hadn't been done altogether yet. And then the 2 girls went and studied Bible school, taught Bible school the first week while us guys worked in church. Then the second week, they came back to help us some on that. But that was a 2-week excursion. It's a change. You're never the same after you do a mission job. For those of you who went to Spain, you'll remember the things. Those who went to Belarus will forever remember those experiences. So in 2005, we built that. Okay, so I get well acquainted with the pastor there, Pastor Gennady, in the town of Gorodisha, remember that. And then his wife had a brother named Timur that had another town west of Gorodisha in Belarus that needed a church too. So in that process of time, you're telling me about that. So I gave him a little money to help him along like that. Well, they always called me Santa Claus when they saw me coming. Here comes Santa Claus. I'll bet he's going to do this. And I did. I bought a refrigerator for a poor couple one time. I bought a bicycle for another lady and her daughter in Minsk, and just a number of other things. Just the Lord blessed me that way, and I guess that's why I don't have nothing now. But anyway, you give it away. I have the memories. So I think 2013, we worked out a deal here. Several of the church here went over there to build an addition onto this church for Pastor Timur. in the town of Stolze, I think it's called. That is just an expansion of this church. It just amazes me that this church here was so willing to support missions. One man, when I was over there, someone I met on the way over there, he said, why are you going to those places to work over there? We have enough problems in America. They never did anything for us. I wouldn't do nothing for them over there. Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. And so as I had visited orphanages and hospitals and saw the tremendous need and people coming up to me, I'd like to be a Christian too. What do I have to do to be a Christian? And it opens up right there now to share the simple gospel that I learned here and so forth. No, I was not perfect in my life. Who is? But nevertheless, God loves you. He forgives your sins. You get to carry on, makes a better person of you, and that sort of thing. So we have this ongoing thing with Belarus now. We're almost like a mother church to the church in Gorodishi, to the church in Stolze. And there's a possibility there might be another church coming up next year in another town that might be helpful. We just had 2 couples come back just week before last that were over there in Stolze visiting with Pastor Timur. And it is just an interesting thing how this just keeps growing. Yes, I know I'm the fault of this. I take the blame. I brought all this stress on you folks for emptying your pockets and helping out and going here. But I think in the end, I think you'll all receive a blessing for those wonderful things. So it's just been, that's what's going on in Belarus. Yeah. And every time I go over there, I take stuff along to give to these orphanages and hospitals. One time, I took a whole bunch of stuff along for babies, and Sergei's wife, Sveta, at the airport, she said, instead of you taking it out to that place, could you come to our place? Midweek, we have a service for expectant mothers. They would love if you could give them some of the things you had. Well, I said, how many years are? Oh, she said 23 women, all expecting. And so I thought, this is going to be funny. I'll be the only man there. This is goofy. But I took my suitcases in there that I took stuff over, and I just opened up, and God supplied enough stuff in them suitcases for everyone to get diapers and cakes of soup and baby bottles and other things like that, which I did frequently. Once in the Walmart store, a lady saw me in here, and she said, you must have a lot of kids. I was picking up diapers. And I told her what she was doing. She said, oh, here, take a couple extra packs, and here's some money to cover those packs when you get up to the cash register. At one time, I had 5 big suitcases of stuff. And I went down to Dulles Airport and walked up to the Lufthansa office there with the cart. And the lady said, well, you must be going to stay a while. What are you doing? And I said, well, 1 suitcase is mine, but the other 4 cases are full of baby supplies for orphanages and hospitals, or in orphanages in this country of Belarus. Oh, my goodness. Oh, well, so they checked it all through and gave me my boarding ticket from the back of the plane, and I started walking away. She said, sir, come back here. We need to straighten things up here a little bit. So I thought, oh, no, what did I do now? And she said, we changed our minds. That's a commendable thing you're doing. Give me your ticket. She tore the ticket up. She said, we're going to send you first class. That's a wonderful thing you're doing. So I set up. I said, my goodness, I went up there in the front of the airplane with the rich and famous. Poor little Georgie from Allensville, from Belleville, PA. So you never know what God has in store for you yet in your lifetime. But this isn't, like I say, this is an ongoing thing in Belarus. It's just a wonderful thing. They love us. They're human beings, just like we are. They had a great need. They weren't allowed to have scriptures and Bibles. They were persecuted terribly in World War II. Whole villages. And I don't know if some of you that went to Belarus got the chance to see some of the memorials and statues there of how the Germans come in and eliminate whole villages, kill all the people, burn everything down. Whoever tried to escape was shot to death right there. So it's a very humbling, sad experience when you see those things like that there, that they went through, that we have not had that problem over here in this country. We don't know what we're going to have to face yet in time, but I feel as long as God gives me breath, they think I need to come over there one more time. I don't know if God gives me strength and grace to get over there next year. I just might, but I don't know. My body's starting to get a little stiff and sore anymore. But they are so thankful for what you do for them. Just wanted to show you this. Some of you had seen this, but here's a little thing that they gave us when we were over there in 2000. Whoops, it goes in here. It has to be fixed. But anyway, as a thank you from the Gorodisi Church to the Allensville Mennonite Church, as a great thank you. And this is not cheap to make, very expensive. They gave that as a gift. A couple other things here. I'm going to put these out in the foyer so you can look at it. But they thanked us very much for those things. That's in Belarus language. And then they gave us this, and I think this is in English language. So I'll try to take them out afterwards so you can look at it later on. But I'm very much impressed, and I say thank you for the support of this church. I read one time in a paper that the Allensville Mennonite Church, in proportion to other churches, is more giving per capita than most churches. Now, they say the Church of the Brethren, church is usually about the highest giving per capita. But the Allensville Mennonite Church is up there way high on the list of giving. So God has blessed us, and he still will. If we bless him, he will bless us. Thank you very much.
Well, it's been a treat this afternoon to hear what God's up to in Spain and through Dwayne and Josh McDowell Ministries and crew, and through what God's been up to in Belarus too. And I'm sure some of you have other stories to share, and God does have a heart for people in every nation. And so we've been engaged here and heard stories about things that are close to God's heart. And so may God continue to bless the efforts of Allensville as we seek to follow his heart and to reach people in every nation, every people group. Is there anything you would like to share? Any memories? We have a couple mics up here, a couple cordless mics. Are there any memories you would like to share? Obviously, we've been involved in Belarus and Spain and different parts around the world, but there's other stories that haven't been shared this afternoon. If there's anything you would like to share as far as a missions experience you've been involved with, or maybe just a memory in general, feel free to raise your hand, and we have mics here, and we'll bring around a mic so that you can share as well. So this is Lauren Hartzler here.
Yeah, I guess I would just like to say that I went to this church all my life, and been to Spain, been to Belarus, did all these mission trips. And God is good, and he just wants our heart. If you ever went on a mission trip with George Moeller, the mission trip we did, the first one we did, 2 weeks we went over there, we did the impossible. When we got there the first morning and he started saying what we were going to do, I thought, George, you're nuts. When we left at the end of 2 weeks, we had a roof on the place. And you can ask Tim. When I was over last year, walked up to that Gorodisi church and tears rolled out of my eyes because God's good. He just wants us to, if we would just trust more in the Holy Spirit and let him guide us, which I think Allensville Mennonite Church does. I just want to commend everybody for the support.
Well, thanks, Lauren. Anybody else? Okay, Debbie in the back there.
I'll be real quick. Last year, Rose and I and a few other ladies have been to Romania to hold babies in orphanages, and God is still working there. I have been in contact with two ladies I met there a year ago, and what you guys have all said is so true. Once you go on a missions trip, it's in your heart, and it will be forever. And the one lady I met has stopped working for like a Crossroads Pregnancy, the Pulse Center, and she and her husband now work in prisons. It's a whole long story, but her heart is just for all these prisoners who need to know the Lord. She is continually being a pro-life advocate, and I said, well, we need pro-life advocates here in America just as well as in Romania. But I just, yeah, there aren't a lot of young people here, but it doesn't matter how old you are. If you have a chance to go be a part of a mission trip, do it, because it will change your life forever. And I'm very thankful for that chance I had to hold 5 little babies when I was there. And a couple other ladies I've talked to, you know, they say we pray for those babies every day. And if nothing else, the Lord provided me a way of praying for some babies that probably wouldn't have been prayed for. So, yeah, I just encourage you to go on mission trips. You don't have to go to out of the country, but go on. It will change your life.
Thanks, Debbie. Anyone else? Okay, George.
Some of you might wonder why I was so excited about going to orphanages and hospital. Well, partly because I was an orphan for almost 2 years at the Millersville Children's Home. But on one of our Josh McDowell trips, we went to this one orphanages where they have orphanages from babies to 5 years old. Then after 5 years old, they have to go to a different orphanage. And so many babies. And they were feeding them with soda bottles with a piece of rubber hose stuck in the top. They had no bottles with nipples. And they'd just pull out of one baby's mouth, the next would cry. They'd stick it in that baby's mouth with the same milk and the same rubber thing. And this bothered me tremendously, that is. And of course, when I started going over and taking nursing bottles, literally hundreds of them, and these different places, someone thought, oh, these plastic nursing bottles, you can't use those, they'll melt when you put them in hot water. And I said, no, this is a kind of plastic, it's not supposed to do that. And so that worked out all right, but they needed thermometers, baby thermometers, and of course, disposable diapers, that was really something, but I also took a lot of cloth diapers also too. Those were just a couple of things so many things. See, Belarus suffered tragically back when the nuclear reactor in Chernobyl exploded. That was just across the Belarus border into northern Ukraine, if I remember right. And this great cloud of radioactivity just drifted north over Belarus, southern part of Belarus, and it caused a lot of deformed babies from expectant mothers, and the ruination of land. Couldn't grow nothing because the ground was contaminated with the radiation. So they suffered greatly from that terrible Chernobyl accident. Now, fortunately, they found out now that the ground is recovering a lot faster from that radioactive waste. But we went to buildings special hospitals where they had children that came from those that were infected by that with funny-looking faces, funny-looking arms, hands with just one stub of like a piece of meat with one finger or one thumb sticking out, or a foot with one toenail sticking out of that glob of flesh, which should have been a foot. I said to myself when I went in there, I want to take pictures and take this back to show the people back home what terrible situation these boys and girls are in, and some of the girls with what they called elephantitis. One half of the girl was developed, and the other half was just like stiff and small. But I couldn't. I just said, God, where are you? This is terrible. Why are your little children suffering so? With babies with rashes on their bodies and skins that if you touch them, they'd scream with pain. But anyway, that's life. Jesus said you always have the poor with you. We have to take care of those too. We can't do like some of the Jewish leaders said. What did their parents do that they're being punished like this with those kids? And Jesus said it's not the kids' fault. They didn't do nothing wrong. It's just that you always have situations like we have that with animals that have problems, and we have with people. But God loves them all. We're still God's children. Thank you.
Well, thanks to each of you for sharing. And let's wrap up this session with a time of prayer. Thanks, God, that you are the great missionary God that sent your own Son to earth, that you moved across from heaven to earth, and that you became human so that you could redeem and reveal yourself to us and make it possible to be reconciled with you. And thank you, too, for the gift and the treasure that you've given us in yourself, and pray that you would continue to guide each one who's gathered here today, grace and strength, and passing that blessing on and being a channel of blessing to others, and sharing the treasure that you've given us of Christ, too, with those around us here in Big Valley, in Spain, Belarus, and around the world. And thank you again for your grace in being able to extend your love and your kindness and your truth to those in need of it. And pray, too, that you would bless the rest of the activities today and continue to draw us to your heart. In Jesus' name, amen.